My dad kicked me out at 18 with 2 bags and $40. Said it would teach me a lesson. I built my entire life from scratch without him. Then 10 years later he showed up at my door, hat in hand. Eyes tired, everything he chose over me had left him with nothing. And I was the only one left. My dad knocked on my door on a Tuesday morning, hat in hand, eyes tired. Looking like a man who'd finally run out of road. I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years. The last time I saw him, I was 18 years old, standing on a sidewalk with 2 bags and $40, watching his car pull away. He said he was teaching me a lesson. Took me a long time to figure out the lesson was actually for him. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 now. I own a small apartment, run my own business, and built everything I have from scratch. With zero help from the man who was supposed to be my father. And this is the story of how he threw me away like I was nothing, and how 10 years later, life handed him the exact same thing back. Let me take you back to when I was 17. Dad remarried when I was 15. Her name was Linda. 2 kids from her first marriage, a son named Blake, 16, and a daughter named Mia, 13. Instantly, I went from only child to middle child in a house where I didn't belong. Dad was different around Linda. Softer, more eager to please, like he was auditioning for a role he really wanted. Which meant whenever Linda had a problem with me, and she always had a problem with me, Dad sided with her. Every single time. Little things at first. I left dishes in the sink. Sarah needs to learn responsibility. I came home 30 minutes late. Sarah has no respect for this household. I disagreed with Linda at dinner once, politely, calmly, and apparently that was disrespectful and ungrateful. I learned to stay quiet. Stay small, stay out of the way. But here's the thing about staying small, it doesn't actually protect you. It just delays the explosion. The money situation started about 6 months before I turned 18. I had a part-time job at a coffee shop, saved every dollar I made, had about $2,000 sitting in my account, money I was planning to use for community college, textbooks, maybe first month's rent somewhere cheap. Linda found out about it somehow. I still don't know how. And suddenly, there was this conversation at dinner about how everyone in the household needed to contribute, how I was living rent-free, how $2,000 was just sitting there doing nothing. I said that money was for college. Linda said there were more important priorities right now. Dad said nothing, just kept eating. 2 weeks later, Dad sat me down alone and told me the family needed help with some bills. Asked if I could contribute $500. I said no. That was my college money. He looked at me like I'd slapped him, said he was disappointed, said I was selfish, said I didn't understand how hard he was working to keep this family together. I said, I'm your daughter. I'm not a roommate. He didn't like that answer. The night he kicked me out, I didn't see it coming, not fully. I'd come home from a shift at the coffee shop. Tired, smelling like espresso, just wanted to shower and sleep. Linda was in the kitchen looking like she'd been waiting for me. Dad was at the table. Both of them sitting like they'd rehearsed this. Linda said I'd borrowed her car without asking. I hadn't. I didn't even have a license at that point. But there was no point arguing. I already knew how this played out. Dad said he was tired of the tension in the house. Said I'd been difficult since Linda and the kids moved in. Said maybe it was time I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. I asked him what that meant. He said I had until the end of the week to make other arrangements. I was 18 years and 2 months old. I looked at my dad, this man who used to carry me on his shoulders, who taught me to ride a bike, who cried at my 5th grade graduation, and I said, "Are you serious right now?" He said, "This is going to be good for you, Sarah. You'll thank me someday." I left 4 days later. Didn't wait for the end of the week. Took my 2 bags, my $2,000, and my $40 in cash, called my friend Jen from the sidewalk. She let me sleep on her couch for 3 months. Dad didn't call to check if I was okay. Not once. The next few years were brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Jen's couch turned into a studio apartment I shared with 2 other girls. Community college while working double shifts. Ramen for dinner more nights than I can count. One winter where my heat got shut off for 3 weeks and I slept in my coat. But here's the thing about being thrown into the deep end. You either sink or you learn to swim. I learned to swim. By 22, I had my own place. Small but mine. By 24, I'd started a freelance graphic design business out of my kitchen table. By 26, I had actual clients, actual income, an actual life that I had built with my own 2 hands. Not once did I call my dad for help. Not once. Because he'd made it very clear I was on my own. I just decided to be really, really good at it. I heard things through the grapevine over the years. Mutual family friends. A cousin who stayed in touch. Linda and Dad were fine for a while apparently. Blake and Mia became his whole world. He went to their graduations, their sports events, their birthdays. The family he'd chosen over me thriving. I won't lie, that hurt. For a long time it really hurt. But I kept building, kept moving, kept my eyes forward. Then around year 7, things started shifting. Linda and Dad started having problems. Nobody told me directly, but the cousin mentioned tension. Then more tension. Then apparently a pretty bad blow-up over money. Ironic, right? Linda's spending habits had gotten out of control, and Dad, who'd always avoided conflict, had finally said something. It went badly. They separated when I was 26. Divorced by the time I was 27. Blake and Mia, they went with Linda. Of course they did, she was their mom. Dad had spent 15 years being their stepdad, showing up for everything, putting them first. And the moment the marriage ended, he became optional. They visited maybe twice after the divorce. Then the visits stopped, then the calls stopped. By the time Dad was 61 years old, he was living alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. No wife, no stepkids, no Sarah. Just the lesson he said he was teaching me, sitting right there in his own living room. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday morning in October. I looked through the peephole and genuinely did not recognize him at first. He'd aged more than 10 years suggested. Thinner, grayer, shoulders curved in like he was carrying something heavy. I stood there for a full minute just staring through that peephole. Part of me wanted to walk away, just not answer. Let him stand there and feel what I felt on that sidewalk at 18, the silence, the waiting, the slow realization that nobody was coming. But I opened the door. He looked at me and his eyes went red immediately. Sarah, he said. That was it, just my name. I said, Dad, long silence. Can I come in, he asked. I stepped aside. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd built my whole business from nothing, and he talked for a long time. He said Linda had taken almost everything in the divorce. Said Blake and Mia had made it clear they saw him as Linda's husband, not their father. Said he'd been alone for 2 years, and it had given him a lot of time to think. Then he said the thing I'd waited 10 years to hear. I was wrong, Sarah. What I did to you was wrong. You didn't deserve that. You were my daughter, and I chose someone else over you, and I have regretted it every single day since. I sat across from him and I didn't cry. I was surprised by that. I thought I would. I just said, why did you come here, Dad? He said he didn't want to die having never said sorry. Said he wasn't asking for anything. Said he just needed me to know. I looked at this old, tired, lonely man sitting at my table, and I thought about 18-year-old Sarah on that sidewalk. 2 bags, $40, no plan. And I thought about everything she built anyway. Here's what I decided that day. I didn't take him back like nothing happened. I'm not that person and this isn't that kind of story. 10 years of silence doesn't get erased by one conversation. But I didn't slam the door either. I told him I heard him. I told him his apology meant something. I told him I needed time to figure out what, if anything, I wanted our relationship to look like going forward. He nodded. Said that was more than fair. Said he'd wait as long as I needed. He left an hour later. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after he was gone, just quiet, just thinking. Linda, by the way, remarried within a year of the divorce. Some guy she'd met at her gym. Blake and Mia immediately adopted him as their new family. Dad wasn't even mentioned at the wedding. He called me to tell me about it. His voice was very flat, very calm, like he was reporting news about someone else. They didn't invite me, he said. I said, I'm sorry, Dad. And I meant it. Not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because watching someone finally understand the cost of their choices, that's not satisfying the way you think it will be. It's just sad. It's been about 8 months since he showed up at my door. We talk on the phone sometimes. Nothing heavy, just check-ins. He asks about my business. I ask about his health. Small steps on a very long road. I'm not sure where it goes. I'm not sure what I want it to become. But I'm willing to find out slowly, carefully, on my terms. Because here's the thing my dad never understood when he put me on that sidewalk at 18. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about surviving without him. He was right. He just didn't realize he was teaching himself the same lesson at the same time. It took him 10 years to figure that out. It took me about 10 minutes on Jen's couch. And everything I built in between. That was all me.